The old grandfather clock in the manor house struck midnight, but then it stopped, not once, but twice, as if time itself was warning of murder lurking in the shadows. Welcome to Miss Marple and the Clock That Stopped Twice, a chilling tale of mystery and intrigue. Grab a cup of tea, take a seat, and let the suspense unfold. If you're hooked and enjoying the story, hit that subscribe button. Your support means a lot to us. Chapter 1. The village whispers in the sleepy English village of St. Mary Mead, where gossip flows faster than the river through the meadows. Life seemed as predictable as the Morning Post. But on that crisp autumn day in 1952, something shifted. Miss Jane Marple, the sharp-eyed spinster with a knack for unravelling secrets, sat in her cosy cottage, knitting a scarf while her gaze drifted to the window. She wasn't one for idle chatter, but even she couldn't ignore the rumours buzzing like bees around the honeysuckle. The villagers whispered about the grand old Hawthorne manor on the hill, home to the wealthy but reclusive Sir Reginald Hawthorne, a man whose fortune in antique clocks hid a lifetime of hidden grudges. Sir Reginald was no stranger to eccentricity. At 72, he collected timepieces from every corner of the world, grandfathers, cuckoos, and pocket watches that ticked with stories of their own. His latest prize was a rare 18th century French ormolu clock, said to be cursed by its original owner, a nobleman who met an untimely end. The manor staff, a loyal but nervous bunch, included the butler Mr. Graves, who had served the family for decades, the young maid Elsie, fresh from the city and full of wide-eyed wonder, and the gardener Tom, whose rough hands hid a gentle heart. They all knew Sir Reginald's routine: dinner at 8, a brandy by the fire, and then winding his clocks at precisely midnight. But last night, something went wrong. Miss Marple first heard the tale from her neighbour, Mrs. Price Ridley, who burst into the cottage unannounced, her face flushed with excitement. "Jane, you won't believe it." The clock stopped twice, once at midnight and again at dawn. "And Sir Reginald—" "He's dead!" "Poisoned, they say, right in his study." Miss Marple set down her needles, her mind already piecing together the puzzle. Poison? In a village where the biggest scandal was usually a stolen pie from the bake sale, she probed gently, as was her way. "Tell me everything, dear. Who found him?" Mrs. Price Ridley leaned in, her voice dropping to a dramatic hush. "It was the butler, of course." Graves said he heard the clock chime oddly, then silence. When he checked, Sir Reginald was slumped over his desk, a glass of brandy spilled, and that cursed clock frozen at 12:03. As the story spread, the village constable arrived, a bumbling fellow named Slack, who fancied himself a detective but often missed the obvious. He cordoned off the manor, muttering about foul play and eyeing the staff suspiciously. Miss Marple, ever the observer, decided to pay a visit under the guise of offering condolences. Slipping on her sensible shoes and a woolen shawl, she made her way up the winding path to Hawthorne Manor. The house loomed like a sentinel, its ivy-covered walls hiding secrets in every crevice. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of polished wood and ticking clocks. Dozens of them, all synchronized except for that one fateful piece. Graves greeted her at the door, his face pale and drawn. "Miss Marple, how kind of you to come." "It's been a dreadful shock," she nodded sympathetically, her eyes scanning the hall. "Indeed, Mr. Graves. Might I see the study? I've always admired Sir Reginald's collection." Reluctantly, he led her in. The room was a treasure trove, clocks on every shelf, their faces gleaming under the lamplight. At the centre sat the ormolu clock, its hands still stuck at 12:03. Miss Marple examined it closely, noting a faint scratch on the base, as if someone had tampered with it. "Tell me," she said casually, "did Sir Reginald have any visitors last night?" Graves hesitated. "Only his nephew, young Mr. Arthur, who arrived unexpectedly from London. They argued about the will, I believe. And then there's the doctor, who stopped by earlier for Sir Reginald's heart medication." Examples of suspicion piled up in Miss Marple's mind like stacked teacups. Arthur Hawthorne, the heir apparent, was known for his gambling debts, a motive if ever there was one. The doctor, old Dr. Haydock, had prescribed digitalis for Sir Reginald's weak heart, but an overdose could mimic poison. Even Elsie the maid had been seen lingering near the study, her city ways making her an outsider in the villagers' eyes. Miss Marple recalled a similar case from her youth, a clockmaker in Devon who used his wares to hide arsenic. Could this be the same? She offered a practical tip to Graves, disguised as chit-chat. Always check the winding mechanism, Mr. Graves. Clocks, like people, reveal their flaws when you look closely. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the manor, Miss Marple returned home, her thoughts racing. The clock stopping twice wasn't just a malfunction. It was a clue, a deliberate signal in a web of deceit. Little did she know, the whispers were only beginning, and the next revelation would draw her deeper into the mystery. Chapter 2. The Nephew's Secret. The morning mist clung to the cobblestone streets of St. Mary Mead as Miss Marple sat by her window, her knitting abandoned on the table. The village was abuzz with theories about Sir Reginald Hawthorne's death, but she preferred facts to speculation. Her visit to the manor had left her with a nagging suspicion. The Ormolu clock, frozen at 12:03, wasn't just a witness to murder, it was part of the crime. Today, she decided to focus on Arthur Hawthorne, the nephew whose sudden arrival and heated argument with his uncle raised more questions than answers. Arthur, a lanky man in his early 30s, with slicked-back hair and a city suit that seemed out of place among the village's tweeds, was staying at the Blue Boar Inn. Miss Marple, under the pretence of delivering a jar of her homemade damson jam, strolled to the inn just after breakfast. The tap-room was quiet, save for the clink of glasses and the low murmur of locals. Arthur sat in a corner, nursing a pint, his eyes darting nervously as if expecting trouble. Miss Marple approached with her usual disarming smile. "Mr. Hawthorne, I presume. I'm Jane Marple, a friend of your late uncle's. My condolences." Arthur's expression softened, but his fingers tightened around the glass. "Thank you, Miss Marple. It's been quite a shock." They settled into a conversation, Miss Marple steering it with the finesse of a seasoned angler. She learned Arthur had arrived from London the previous evening, claiming he wanted to discuss family matters. Uncle Reginald was stubborn about his estate, Arthur admitted, his voice tinged with bitterness. "Said I'd get nothing unless I settled down. We had words, but I left him alive, I swear." Miss Marple nodded, her eyes noting the faint tremor in his hands. She asked about his movements after the argument. "I went for a walk," he said quickly. "Needed to clear my head. Got back to the inn around 1. The innkeeper, wiping down the bar, overheard and chimed in. I saw Mr. Arthur come in late, looking like he'd seen a ghost." Miss Marple's instincts prickled. A late-night walk with no witnesses? Convenient. She shifted the topic to the manor, asking about the staff. Arthur mentioned Elsie the maid, with a hint of disdain. "She's too nosy for her own good. Kept hovering near the study when I was there." He also spoke of Mr. Graves, the butler, with grudging respect, but his tone darkened when mentioning Dr. Haydock. "That old quack's been bleeding my uncle dry with those pills. Wouldn't trust him." Miss Marple filed away each detail, her mind sketching a map of motives. Leaving the inn, she decided to visit the village post office, a hub for gossip. Mrs. Murgatroyd, the postmistress, was eager to share. "That Arthur's no good, mark my words. I heard he owes money to some rough types in London. Came here sniffing for his inheritance, no doubt." She leaned closer, her voice dropping. "And last night, Tom the gardener saw him near the manor's back gate, well after midnight. Said he was pacing like a caged fox." Miss Marple's eyebrows rose slightly. Tom's sighting contradicted Arthur's claim of returning to the inn by 1. A lie, perhaps, or an innocent misstep. Her next stop was the churchyard, where she often found clarity among the gravestones. As she wandered, she spotted Tom trimming the hedges. The gardener, a wiry man with weathered hands, was happy to talk. I I saw Mr. Arthur last night, he confirmed. Looked jumpy, kept glancing at the manor. Thought it odd, him being out so late? Miss Marple pressed gently, asking if Tom noticed anything else unusual. He hesitated, then admitted. There was a light in the manor's attic window, flickering like a candle. Never seen that before. An attic light. Sir Reginald rarely ventured upstairs, according to the staff. Another piece of the puzzle. As the day waned, Miss Marple returned to her cottage, her thoughts swirling. Arthur's shaky alibi, his debts, and that mysterious attic light painted him as a suspect. But she knew better than to jump to conclusions. People, like clocks, had hidden gears, motives that ticked out of sight. The manor held more secrets, and she suspected the next clue lay closer to the heart of the house. With the village settling into evening, she resolved to dig deeper, knowing the truth was as elusive as a shadow in a storm. Chapter 3. The Maid's Tale. The sun hung low over St. Mary Mead, casting golden rays across the village green as Miss Marple made her way back to Hawthorne Manor. The ormolu clock's double pause and Arthur's questionable alibi gnawed at her, but today her focus turned to Elsie, the young maid whose city manners had raised eyebrows among the villagers. Miss Marple knew that those on the fringes of a household often saw what others missed, and Elsie's nervous hovering near the study on the night of the murder suggested she held a piece of the puzzle. Arriving at the manor, Miss Marple found Elsie polishing silver in the dining room, her hands moving quickly, but her eyes darting to the door. "Good afternoon, Elsie," Miss Marple said warmly, settling into a chair as if for a casual chat. "You must be exhausted with all this upheaval." Elsie flushed, her polishing cloth pausing. "It's been awful, ma'am. Sir Reginald was kind to me, even if he was peculiar about his clocks." Miss Marple nodded, her tone gentle but probing. "You were in the study that night, weren't you? Helping with the evening tea, perhaps?" Elsie's eyes widened, but she nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I brought in the brandy tray around 10 before it happened." Miss Marple leaned forward, her voice soft as a whisper. "And did you notice anything unusual? A guest, perhaps, or something out of place?" Elsie hesitated, twisting the cloth in her hands. "I shouldn't say, ma'am, but there was a letter on Sir Reginald's desk, sealed with a red wax stamp. I didn't read it, I swear, but it looked important, and when I left, Mr. Arthur was still there, arguing loud enough to wake the dead." Her voice dropped. "Later, when I went to clear the tray, the letter was gone." Miss Marple's mind sparked. A missing letter. It could be nothing, or everything. To ease Elsie's nerves, Miss Marple asked about her life before St. Mary Mead. Elsie admitted she'd come from London, seeking a quieter life after a stint working in a bustling hotel. "I thought the manor would be peaceful," she said with a wry smile. "But it's got its own dramas." She mentioned overhearing Sir Reginald and Dr. Haydock discussing his heart condition a week prior, the doctor insisting on a new dosage of digitalis. "Sir Reginald didn't like it," Elsie confided. "Said the pills made him dizzy, but he took them anyway." Miss Marple noted this, recalling that digitalis, if mishandled, could turn medicine into poison. Leaving the manor, Miss Marple decided to cross-check Elsie's story with another source. She headed to the village tea shop, where Mrs. Bantry, a friend with a knack for local law, sipped her Earl Grey. Over scones, Miss Marple mentioned Elsie's account of the letter. Mrs. Bantry's eyes lit up. "A red wax seal, you say? That sounds like old Lady Hawthorne's style. Sir Reginald's late mother. She used to seal her private correspondence that way. If there was a letter, it might have been something from the family archives, maybe about the estate." Miss Marple frowned. Why would such a letter vanish, and who took it? As she walked home, Miss Marple passed the manor's stables, where she spotted Mr. Graves, the butler, inspecting a delivery of firewood. Seizing the chance, she asked casually, "Mr. Graves, did Sir Reginald keep important papers in his study? Letters, perhaps?" Graves stiffened, then shook his head. "He was particular about his desk, ma'am. Kept it locked, though I saw him reading a sealed letter a few days ago." Didn't say what it was. His tone was guarded, and Miss Marple sensed he knew more than he let on. She thanked him and moved on, her thoughts circling the missing letter and its possible link to the murder. By dusk, Miss Marple sat in her garden, the scent of roses mingling with the evening chill. Elsie's story, the vanished letter, and Graves's reticence pointed to a secret tied to the manor's past. Was the letter a will, a confession, or something darker? The clock's eerie pause at dawn felt like a warning, urging her to look beyond the obvious. As the stars emerged, she knew her next step would take her closer to the manor's heart, where the truth ticked like a hidden spring. Chapter 4. The Doctor's Doubt. The air in St. Mary Mead carried a chill as Miss Marple set out for the village surgery, her mind fixed on Dr. Haydock, the physician who had prescribed Sir Reginald's heart medication. The missing letter and Elsie's account had deepened the mystery, but the possibility of digitalis poisoning tugged at her thoughts. A doctor, trusted by all, could wield medicine as a weapon, and Miss Marple knew better than to assume innocence based on reputation. Her goal was to uncover what Dr. Haydock knew, and what he might be hiding. The surgery was a modest brick building near the village square, its waiting room empty save for a ticking wall clock. Dr. Haydock, a wiry man in his 60s with a tired smile, greeted her warmly. "Miss Marple, what brings you here? Not feeling under the weather, I hope?" She chuckled, easing into her role as the curious villager. "Oh, nothing serious, Doctor. I just thought to check on you after the dreadful news about Sir Reginald. You saw him that day, didn't you?" Haydock's smile faltered, and he gestured for her to sit. "Yes, I visited in the afternoon. Routine checkup for his heart. Such a tragedy." Miss Marple steered the conversation carefully, asking about Sir Reginald's health. Haydock explained that the old man's heart condition had worsened, requiring a higher dose of digitalis to regulate his pulse. "He wasn't keen on it," Haydock admitted, rubbing his neck. "Complained it made him nauseous, but I assured him it was necessary." Miss Marple's eyes sharpened, though her tone remained light. "And you're certain the dosage was correct?" "I've heard digitalis can be tricky." Haydock bristled slightly. "I've prescribed it for years, Miss Marple. His bottle was filled at the chemist's, same as always. I checked it myself." Sensing his defensiveness, she shifted topics, asking about his visit to the manor. Haydock recalled arriving around 4, staying only briefly to adjust Sir Reginald's prescription. He seemed agitated, the doctor said, frowning, kept muttering about family matters, something about a promise he had to keep. "I didn't pry." Miss Marple nodded, her mind catching on that word, promise. Could it tie to the sealed letter Elsie mentioned? She asked if he'd noticed anything odd in the study. "Nothing out of the ordinary," Haydock replied, but his fingers tapped the desk, betraying unease. "Though Sir Reginald did ask me to witness a document a few weeks ago. Wouldn't say what it was, just needed my signature." Leaving the surgery, Miss Marple strolled to the chemist's shop to verify Haydock's story. Mr. Polk, the chemist, was a meticulous man with a ledger for every transaction. He confirmed the digitalis prescription was filled as ordered, with no discrepancies. "Dr. Haydock picked it up himself," Polk said, flipping through his records. "Said it was urgent for Sir Reginald." Miss Marple thanked him, but a question lingered. If the prescription was standard, how had poison found its way into Sir Reginald's system? An overdose, intentional or not, seemed plausible. Her next stop was the village hall, where she bumped into Constable Slack, still bumbling through his investigation. Over tea, she casually mentioned Haydock's visit to the manor. Slack scratched his head. "Funny you say that. We found the digitalis bottle in the study, half empty. Coroner's still testing it, but it looked tampered with. Cap wasn't sealed right." Miss Marple's pulse quickened, though she kept her expression neutral. A tampered bottle suggested sabotage, but by whom? Haydock, with his access to the drug, was an obvious suspect. Yet his agitation hinted at fear, not guilt. As evening fell, Miss Marple sat by her fireplace, the glow casting shadows on her walls. Haydock's signed document and the tampered bottle added new layers to the mystery. Was the doctor a culprit, a pawn, or simply careless? The word promise echoed in her mind, linking back to the manor's secrets. The clock's second stop at dawn felt like a taunt, daring her to unravel the truth before another piece fell into place. With night settling over the village, she knew her next move would take her back to the manor's ticking heart. Chapter 5. The Attic's Whisper. The morning light filtered through the lace curtains of Miss Marple's cottage, but her thoughts were far from the serene village scene. The tampered digitalis bottle and Dr. Haydock's vague talk of a signed document had tightened the knot of the mystery. Yet, it was the flickering attic light Tom the gardener mentioned that beckoned her now. An attic was a place for forgotten things, old secrets, dusty relics, perhaps even answers. Determined to explore, Miss Marple set out for Hawthorne Manor, her umbrella in hand as a drizzle began to fall. The manor's heavy oak door creaked as Mr. Graves ushered her inside, his face a mask of polite reserve. "Back so soon, Miss Marple?" he said, though his eyes betrayed curiosity. She smiled, mentioning a desire to see the manor's upper floors, claiming an interest in its architecture. Graves hesitated but led her upstairs, past portraits of stern-faced hawthorns glaring from gilded frames. The attic door was tucked at the end of a narrow corridor, its locks stiff with disuse. "We rarely come up here," Graves admitted, turning the key. "Sir Reginald kept it for storage." The attic was a cavern of shadows, cluttered with crates, moth-eaten furniture, and cobwebs that danced in the draught. A single window, grimy with age, let in a sliver of light. Miss Marple's eyes scanned the room, landing on a small table where a melted candle stub sat, its wax pooled like a frozen tear. The flickering light Tom saw? She stepped closer, noticing faint footprints in the dust, small, like a woman's. Elsie, perhaps, or someone else entirely. Near the table, a wooden chest caught her attention, its lid slightly ajar. Inside were bundles of letters, yellowed with time, but one stood out, a red waxed envelope, its seal broken. Miss Marple's heart quickened as she slipped on her gloves and lifted the letter. It was addressed to Sir Reginald, dated a month prior, in a flowing script she recognised as Lady Hawthorne's from Mrs. Bantry's description. The contents were brief but cryptic. "Reginald, the debt must be settled. The truth lies with the clock. Forgive me." No signature, only a faint smudge of ink. A debt? The Ormolu clock? She tucked the letter into her pocket, intending to study it later, and continued her search. Behind the chest, she found a hidden panel in the wall, barely noticeable unless you knew to look. It was locked, but scratches around the latch suggested recent use. Descending to the drawing room, Miss Marple found Elsie tidying the cushions. The maid's face paled when asked about the attic. "I've never been up there, ma'am," she stammered. "It's creepy, and Sir Reginald forbade it." Her denial was too quick, and Miss Marple noted the way Elsie's hands twisted her apron. To test her, she mentioned the candle. "Someone's been up there recently, Elsie. A light was seen." The maid's eyes darted away. "Maybe Tom, ma'am. He's always poking about." But Tom had no reason to lie about the attic, and Elsie's unease spoke volumes. Later at the village pub, Miss Marple overheard a snippet from two farmers about a stranger seen near the manor a week before the murder. A woman in a dark cloak slipping through the back gate. No one knew her, but the description stirred a memory of a case years ago. A family secret hidden in an attic, uncovered by a single letter. Could this stranger be linked to Lady Hawthorne's note? Miss Marple resolved to ask Mrs. Bantry about any female visitors to the manor, but her friend was away visiting relatives. As dusk painted the sky in hues of violet, Miss Marple sat in her parlour, the stolen letter on her table. Its words, debt, clock, truth, wove a thread through the manor's shadows. The attic's secrets, the stranger's presence, and Elsie's nervous denial pointed to a conspiracy older than the murder itself. The clock's eerie pause at 12:03 seemed to echo from that hidden panel, urging her to unlock the past before the killer struck again. Chapter 6. The Gardener's Burden. The rain had stopped, leaving St. Mary Mead glistening under a pale September sun. Miss Marple, her mind buzzing with the cryptic letter from the attic, turned her attention to Tom, the gardener whose keen eyes had spotted both Arthur's late-night pacing and the attic's flickering light. His quiet demeanour and long years at Hawthorne Manor suggested he knew more than he let on. A man who tended the earth, she reasoned, often noticed what others overlooked. Small details, like a misplaced footprint or a whispered secret. With her shawl draped over her shoulders, she headed to the manor's gardens to seek him out. Tom was near the rose beds, pruning with a steady hand, his weathered cap pulled low. "Good morning, Tom," Miss Marple called, her voice carrying the warmth of a neighbourly chat. He looked up, surprised but polite, wiping his hands on his apron. "Miss Marple, didn't expect you here. Roses are past their prime, I'm afraid." She smiled, admiring a wilting bloom. "They're still lovely. You've a gift for keeping things alive. Must see a lot. Working these grounds?" Tom nodded, his eyes wary, sensing her questions weren't just about flowers. They walked along the gravel path, Miss Marple steering the conversation to the night of the murder. "You mentioned seeing Arthur near the back gate," she said casually. "Anything else catch your eye that night?" Tom hesitated, his shears pausing mid-snip. "Well, ma'am, it's not my place to gossip, but I did hear something odd. Voices, low and urgent, coming from the study window round 11. Couldn't make out words, but one was Sir Reginald's, and the other sounded like a woman." "A woman?" Miss Marple's pulse quickened, recalling the cloaked stranger the farmers mentioned at the pub. She pressed gently, asking if he recognized the voice. Tom shook his head. "Too far to tell, ma'am, but it wasn't Elsie. She was in the kitchen then. I checked the gate after, thinking someone might have slipped out, but it was locked tight." His mention of the gate jogged her memory of the attic's hidden panel. Could it be an exit point? She asked about the manor's layout, feigning curiosity about its history. Tom, loosening up, described an old servant's passage behind the study, rarely used, but accessible from the attic. "Haven't seen it open in years," he added, "but Sir Reginald kept a key somewhere." Miss Marple's thoughts raced. A secret passage could explain how someone entered or left unnoticed. She shifted topics, asking about Tom's time at the manor. He'd worked there since he was a lad, loyal to the Hawthorne family despite their quirks. "Sir Reginald was fair," he said, his voice softening. "But he changed after Lady Hawthorne passed. Got secretive, always writing letters and locking them away." Miss Marple recalled the red waxed letter and its talk of a debt. Had Tom seen it? She tested the waters. Did he ever mention a family matter? Perhaps something unresolved? Tom's face clouded. "Once, ma'am. Said he owed someone, something from long ago. Didn't say who." Leaving the gardens, Miss Marple visited the village library, a quiet nook where old records sometimes held clues. The librarian, Miss Hartnell, helped her dig through manor archives. They found a faded blueprint showing the servant's passage Tom described, connecting the attic to the study via a narrow staircase. More intriguing was a mention of Lady Hawthorne's charitable work, including a mysterious donation to an unnamed woman in 1930, shortly before her death. Could this be the debt her letter referenced? Miss Marple jotted down the details, sensing a thread tying the past to the present. By afternoon, she stopped at the village green, where children played and gossip lingered. A local baker, delivering bread, mentioned seeing Tom near the manor's back gate the morning after the murder, carrying a sack that looked heavy. "Thought it was gardening tools," the baker said, "but he seemed in a hurry." Miss Marple filed this away. Was Tom disposing of evidence or simply doing his job? His loyalty to the Hawthornes didn't rule out desperation or coercion. As twilight settled, Miss Marple sat in her armchair, the attic letter beside her. Tom's story of the woman's voice, the secret passage, and the long-ago debt painted a picture of betrayal rooted in the manor's history. The clock's double stop, midnight and dawn, felt like markers of a crime planned with precision. With each step, the mystery deepened, pulling her toward a truth buried in the shadows of the past. Tomorrow she would unravel more, perhaps by confronting the manor's silent walls. Chapter 7. The Passage of Secrets. The autumn breeze rustled the leaves outside Miss Marple's cottage, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke as she sipped her morning tea. Her thoughts were tangled in the web of clues from Hawthorne Manor, the cryptic letter, the tampered digitalis, and now Tom's revelation of a woman's voice and a hidden servant's passage. The manor itself seemed to guard its secrets as fiercely as its late owner, and Miss Marple felt the pull of its shadows. The passage, connecting the attic to the study, was a tantalizing lead, a hidden artery through which a killer might have moved unseen. Today, she resolved to explore it, hoping its dusty corners would yield answers to the murder that had shaken St. Mary Mead. She donned her tweed coat and sturdy shoes, tucking the attic letter into her handbag for safekeeping. The walk to the manor was brisk, the village waking slowly under a grey sky. At the manor's gate, she paused, studying the ivy-clad walls as if they might whisper their secrets. Mr. Graves met her at the door, his usual composure tinged with fatigue. "Miss Marple, you're becoming a regular visitor," he said, a faint question in his tone. She smiled, her eyes twinkling with disarming warmth. "I couldn't resist another look at the manor's charm, Mr. Graves. Might I explore the upper floors again? I've a fancy for old houses." Though sceptical, he agreed, leading her to the staircase with a warning to mind the creaky steps. The attic was as she'd left it, a maze of forgotten relics under a veil of dust. The candle stub still sat on the table, its wax a silent witness to someone's nocturnal visit. Miss Marple's gaze settled on the hidden panel Tom had indirectly pointed her toward. It was cleverly disguised, its edges blending with the wall's warped panelling. She ran her fingers along the seam, feeling for a latch. A faint click rewarded her patience, and the panel swung open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The air was musty, heavy with the scent of old wood and secrets long buried. She lit a small torch from her bag, its beam cutting through the gloom. The passage was cramped, its walls rough with age. Cobwebs brushed her face as she descended, her steps careful on the uneven stairs. At the bottom, she found a second door, its hinges rusted but functional. It opened into the back of the study, behind a heavy bookcase that pivoted just enough to allow passage. Miss Marple's heart quickened. This was how someone could have entered or left without being seen. She examined the study side, noting scuff marks on the floor where the bookcase had been moved recently. A faint trace of lavender lingered, a scent too delicate for Sir Reginald's brandy-soaked study. A woman's perfume, perhaps? Back in the attic, she searched for more clues. Near the panel, she found a scrap of fabric caught on a splinter. A fine silk, dark blue, unlike the coarse aprons Elsie wore or the rough tweeds of the village. It suggested an outsider, possibly the cloaked woman spotted near the manor. Miss Marple tucked the fabric into her bag, her mind racing. The letter's mention of a debt and the truth lies with the clock gnawed at her. Was the Ormolu clock more than a timepiece? She recalled its scratch mark, wondering if it hid a compartment or a message. Leaving the manor, she visited Mrs. Bantry, who had returned from her trip. Over tea, Miss Marple shared the attic letter's contents, careful to gauge her friend's reaction. Mrs. Bantry's eyes widened. A debt? That sounds like Lady Hawthorne's old scandal. Years ago, there was talk of her aiding a young woman in trouble. Some said a relative, others a servant. Sir Reginald never spoke of it, but he inherited her private papers. Miss Marple pressed for details, learning the woman had vanished after receiving a large sum, rumoured to be hush money. Could she or her kin have returned to claim more? At the village shop, Miss Marple overheard another tidbit. A delivery boy had seen a woman in a blue silk scarf near the manor's back gate, days before the murder, speaking to someone in the shadows. The description matched the fabric scrap, strengthening her theory of an outsider's involvement. She decided to confront Constable Slack, hoping his investigation had uncovered more. At the police station, Slack was predictably flustered, sorting through reports. "We're testing the brandy glass now," he said. "Traces of digitalis beyond the prescribed dose. Someone spiked it, but the bottle's clean. Must have been added directly." Miss Marple nodded, her mind linking the passage to the crime. A killer could have slipped in, tampered with the brandy, and vanished. As evening fell, she stopped by the church, where the quiet helped her think. The vicar, passing by, mentioned seeing Tom near the manor's stables the night of the murder, carrying a sack that seemed oddly heavy for tools. "He looked troubled," the vicar said, "but Tom's always been loyal." Miss Marple's suspicions deepened. Was Tom protecting someone or hiding his own guilt? The passage, the lavender scent, and the silk scrap pointed to a calculated plan, with the clock's double stop as its eerie signature. Back home, Miss Marple lit a fire, the attic letter and fabric scrap on her table. The servants' passage was a key, but to what? A family secret, a vengeful return, or a betrayal closer to home? The manor's walls held the truth, and she knew her next step would take her deeper into its labyrinth, where the past and present ticked in dangerous harmony. Chapter 8. The Cloaked Shadow. The first hints of frost glittered on the hedgerows of St. Mary Mead as Miss Marple awoke to a crisp morning, her breath visible in the chill air of her bedroom. The discoveries in the servants' passage, the lavender scent, the silk scrap, and the implications of a hidden intruder had kept her mind active long into the night. She couldn't shake the image of the cloaked woman mentioned by the farmers and the delivery boy, a figure who seemed to drift through the village like a ghost from the past. This stranger, with her possible connection to Lady Hawthorne's old debt, represented a thread that could unravel the entire tapestry of Sir Reginald's murder. Determined to trace her, Miss Marple wrapped herself in a warm scarf and set out early, her steps purposeful along the winding lanes. Her first destination was the Blue Boar Inn, where travellers often stayed and gossip flowed as freely as the ale. The innkeeper, Mr. Petherick, a rotund man with a booming voice and a memory for faces, was polishing glasses behind the bar. "Miss Marple, up with the larks today," he greeted, setting down his cloth. She smiled, ordering a pot of tea to ease into her inquiries. "I've heard talk of a visitor recently, a woman in a dark cloak. Did she stay here?" Mr. Petherick leaned forward, his eyes narrowing in thought. "Aye, about a week ago. Called herself Mrs. Evelyn Cross. Kept to herself, paid in cash, said she was passing through on family business. Left the morning after Sir Reginald's death, in quite a hurry." Miss Marple's interest piqued. Evelyn Cross, a name that rang no bells in the village, but perhaps it was an alias. She asked for details. The woman was in her 50s, elegant but worn, with sharp features and a faint London accent. She'd asked directions to Hawthorne Manor but claimed no relation. Mr. Petherick recalled her wearing a blue silk scarf, matching the scrap from the attic. Seemed anxious, he added. Asked about the local post office, sent a letter or two. Miss Marple thanked him, her mind connecting dots. A letter, perhaps the one with the red wax seal, or another piece of correspondence tying back to the manor's secrets. From the inn, she made her way to the post office, where Mrs. Murgatroyd reigned supreme over stamps and scandals. The postmistress was sorting mail, her glasses perched on the end of her nose. "Mrs. Cross?" "Yes, she posted a parcel to London, addressed to a Mr. L. Blackwood at a solicitor's firm. Seemed important, wrapped tight." Miss Marple noted the name. Blackwood. Could he be a lawyer handling the Hawthorne estate or something more sinister? She inquired about incoming mail for the stranger. "Nothing," Mrs. Murgatroyd said, but then paused, though she did receive a telegram the day before she left. Looked shaken after reading it. The content? Unknown, but the timing aligned with the murder. Armed with this, Miss Marple decided to delve deeper into the Hawthorne family history. She visited the village library once more, where Miss Hartnell helped pull dusty volumes on local genealogy. Together they uncovered a faded entry. Lady Hawthorne, née Evelyn Beaumont, had a younger sister who vanished in the 1920s amid rumours of a scandalous affair. The sister's name? Clara Beaumont. But wait, Evelyn Cross? Could it be a married name or a disguise? Further pages revealed a connection. Clara had a daughter, born out of wedlock, who was quietly adopted out. Lady Hawthorne's charitable donation might have been support for this child. The debt, a lingering obligation Sir Reginald inherited. The puzzle pieces shifted in Miss Marple's mind. If Mrs. Cross was connected to Clara, perhaps the daughter herself, she might have come seeking restitution, only to find Sir Reginald unwilling. A motive for murder? The lavender scent, the silk scarf, the hidden passage, all pointed to her as the intruder. But how did she access the digitalis, or spike the brandy? Miss Marple recalled Dr. Haydock's defensiveness. Perhaps he knew more about the family secrets, having been the Hawthorne physician for decades. She headed to the surgery, finding Dr. Haydock reviewing patient files. His welcome was cordial but guarded. "Miss Marple, twice in a week. You're keeping me on my toes." She eased into the topic, mentioning the old scandal delicately. Haydock's face paled. "That's ancient history," he said sharply. "Lady Hawthorne confided in me once about helping her sister's child. Sir Reginald continued the payments, but recently stopped, saying the estate couldn't afford it. He signed a document ending the arrangement, a codicil to his will, I believe. I witnessed it." Miss Marple's eyes widened inwardly. The signed document, and the missing letter could have been a plea from the beneficiary. Haydock admitted the woman had visited him too, under the name Cross, asking about Sir Reginald's health. "She seemed desperate," he confessed. "I told her nothing, but she left upset." This placed her in the village, with knowledge of the digitalis. Perhaps she stole a sample from the surgery, or coerced someone inside the manor. Miss Marple thanked him, her thoughts swirling. The cloaked shadow was solidifying into a suspect, but accomplices lingered. Arthur's debts, Elsie's nerves, Tom's burdens. Afternoon brought her back to the manor, where she requested a chat with the staff together. Graves, Elsie, and Tom gathered in the drawing room, the ticking clocks a constant backdrop. Miss Marple spoke gently but firmly. "A woman visited here recently in secret. One of you may have seen her." Elsie fidgeted, admitting to spotting a figure in the garden one evening. "Thought it was a ghost," she whispered. Tom nodded, recalling unlocking the back gate at Sir Reginald's odd request a few days prior. Graves remained silent, but his knuckles whitened on his chair. Pressing Graves, Miss Marple revealed the attic letter. The butler sighed, his shoulders slumping. It was from her, Mrs. Cross. She claimed to be Sir Reginald's niece, the illegitimate one. He met her in the study, argued fiercely. She left through the passage to avoid notice. So, the woman's voice Tom heard was hers, but Graves insisted she departed before midnight, before the poisoning. Miss Marple wasn't convinced. The clock's stop at 12:03 suggested a return. As the sun dipped, casting long shadows, Miss Marple walked the manor grounds, tracing the stranger's possible path. Near the back gate she found a discarded glove, leather scented with lavender. Inside was a monogram, E.C. Evelyn Cross. Evidence, but circumstantial. The village constable, Slack, would dismiss it. But to Miss Marple, it was a beacon. Evening found her at home, poring over notes by lamplight. The cloaked shadow had a name, a motive, and a means. Yet, the double-stopped clock hinted at complexity, a partnership perhaps with someone inside. Arthur's arrival, the tampered brandy, the attic light, all intertwined. As the fire crackled, Miss Marple sensed the climax approaching, the truth ready to chime like a wound clock. The next day promised revelations, but for now, the village slept under a blanket of stars, unaware of the storm brewing in its midst. Miss Marple retired, her mind alert, knowing the shadow's full form would soon emerge from the darkness. Chapter 9. The Ticking Confrontation. The village of St. Mary Mead lay under a blanket of early morning fog, the kind that muffled sounds and turned familiar paths into mysterious trails. Miss Jane Marple stood at her cottage window, a cup of steaming tea in her hands, watching the mist swirl like unspoken secrets. The revelations about Evelyn Cross, the cloaked woman with her lavender-scented glove, her ties to the Hawthorne family's buried scandal, and her desperate pleas to Sir Reginald had brought the mystery into sharper focus. Yet, pieces still eluded her. The exact method of the poisoning, the role of the Ormolu clock in the truth it supposedly held, and whether Cross acted alone or with an accomplice from within the manor. The double stopping of the clock, at midnight and again at dawn, felt like a deliberate riddle, a mechanical cry for attention that pointed to a killer's cunning plan. Today, Miss Marple decided, was the day to stir the pot, to gather the suspects and watch their reactions tick like the manor's many timepieces. She began her day with a purposeful walk to the police station, her sensible shoes crunching on the gravel. Constable Slack was there, buried in paperwork, his uniform slightly askew as if he'd slept in it. "Miss Marple," he grumbled, looking up with a mix of irritation and reluctant respect. "Come to solve my case for me." She smiled demurely, settling into a chair opposite his desk. "Not at all, Constable, but I have some information that might assist." "Have you traced the telegram Mrs. Evelyn Cross received at the inn?" Slack's eyebrows shot up. He hadn't known about the telegram. Miss Marple explained her findings from the post office, suggesting it might have been a signal or confirmation related to the murder. "And the glove I found near the back gate," she added, producing it from her bag with a flourish. "Monogrammed EC, scented with lavender, matches the scent in the secret passage." Slack examined the glove, his face reddening as he realized the implications. "This could be evidence," he muttered, scribbling notes. "We'll send a wire to London about this Blackwood fellow she posted to. Sounds like a solicitor. Maybe he knows her whereabouts." Miss Marple nodded approvingly, then shared more. The codicil Dr. Haydock witnessed, ending payments to the illegitimate niece. Sir Reginald's decision to cut her off might have been the spark, she suggested gently. Slack promised to follow up, but Miss Marple knew his bumbling ways. She'd need to orchestrate a confrontation herself to draw out the truth. Leaving the station, she made her way to Hawthorne Manor, the fog lifting to reveal the house's imposing silhouette against the hills. The air was crisp, carrying the earthy scent of fallen leaves and distant chimney smoke. Mr. Graves opened the door, his butler's poise impeccable, though dark circles under his eyes spoke of sleepless nights. "Miss Marple, to what do we owe this visit?" he inquired, stepping aside. She requested a gathering in the drawing room, all the staff and Arthur Hawthorne, if he was still in the village. "It's time we cleared the air," she said firmly, her tone leaving no room for refusal. Graves complied, though his expression was guarded, as if he sensed the net tightening. The drawing room was a symphony of ticking clocks, their rhythms overlapping in a cacophony that mirrored the tension building within. Elsie arrived first, her maid's uniform crisp, but her hands trembling as she smoothed her apron. Tom followed, dirt still on his boots from the garden, his face weathered and unreadable. Arthur Hawthorne sauntered in next, his city suit rumpled, a cigarette dangling from his lips. "What's this about, old girl?" he asked Miss Marple, his voice laced with false bravado. Finally, Graves joined them, closing the doors with a soft click that echoed like a finality. Miss Marple stood by the fireplace, her small frame commanding the room with quiet authority. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steady and conversational, as if discussing the weather. Sir Reginald's death was no accident, as we all know. Poisoned with an overdose of his own digitalis, administered in his brandy, the Ormolu clock stopping twice, at midnight just after his death, and at dawn, was no coincidence. It was tampered with, a signal perhaps, or a diversion. She paused, her eyes scanning each face. Elsie's wide-eyed fear, Tom's stoic gaze, Arthur's nervous fidgeting, Graves' impassive mask. She turned to Arthur first. You arrived unexpectedly from London, argued with your uncle about the will, and your alibi for the night is shaky at best. Tom saw you pacing near the manor after midnight. Arthur stubbed out his cigarette, his face flushing. I told you I went for a walk. Uncle was alive when I left. Those debts of mine. Yes, I have them, but I'd never kill for money. Miss Marple nodded, not pressing further yet, but noting his defensive posture. Next, she addressed Elsie. You handled the brandy tray that night, and you've been nervous ever since. You saw the sealed letter on the desk, which vanished. Was it from Mrs. Cross? Elsie burst into tears, her words tumbling out. I didn't do anything wrong. I overheard Sir Reginald and that woman arguing in the study a few days before. She begged him for money, said it was her right as family. He refused, called her a blackmailer. I told no one, I swear. Miss Marple patted her arm soothingly, but her mind catalogued the confirmation. Cross had been inside the manor before the murder. Tom was next, his rough hands clasped tightly. You've been loyal to the Hawthorns for years, Tom, but you unlocked the back gate at Sir Reginald's request, allowing Mrs. Cross entry, and the vicar saw you with a heavy sack the morning after. Disposing of evidence, perhaps. Tom's face crumpled. It was just old gardening rubbish, but I let her in. Sir Reginald asked me to, said it was private business. I heard them quarrelling from the garden, something about a clock holding the truth. Didn't think much of it till now. Miss Marple's eyes sharpened. The clock again, central to the riddle. Finally, Graves. You knew about the secret passage, Mr. Graves. You admitted Mrs. Cross left through it after her argument. But did she return? The lavender scent in the passage, the silk scrap. They point to her using it again on the night of the murder. Graves sighed deeply, his composure cracking. She did return, Miss Marple. Slipped back in around 11, using the passage. I caught her in the study, but she claimed Sir Reginald summoned her. They argued again. I heard raised voices. She left before midnight, or so I thought. But later, when I found him dead, the clock had stopped, and a vial was missing from his desk. The extra digitalis Dr. Haydock had left. The room fell silent, the clock's ticking amplifying the revelations. Miss Marple pieced it aloud. Mrs. Cross, desperate after being cut off, spiked the brandy with digitalis she stole or obtained earlier. She tampered with the ormolu clock, perhaps winding it wrong to stop at 12:03 as a false clue, or hiding something inside it. The second stop at dawn? Maybe a delayed mechanism, or another visit. Arthur interjected, but why the clock? Uncle was obsessed with it. Miss Marple recalled the letter's words. The truth lies with the clock. She approached the ormolu clock in the study, adjacent to the drawing room, and examined it closely. With a gentle twist, she found a hidden compartment in the base, a small drawer, scratched as she'd noted before. Inside was a document, the codicil to Sir Reginald's will, ending payments to Evelyn Cross's daughter. No, wait. The paper revealed Cross was Clara Beaumont's daughter, Sir Reginald's secret niece. But attached was a confession. Sir Reginald had forged documents years ago to hide the scandal, denying her inheritance. This is the truth, Miss Marple murmured. She wanted this destroyed, or used it as leverage. The group crowded around, gasps echoing. But a noise from the hall. Footsteps. Constable Slack burst in, out of breath. We've got her! Mrs. Cross, arrested in London. Confessed to blackmail but swears she didn't kill him. Says she argued. Left the vial for him to consider suicide. Melodramatic, that. But claims someone else must have used it. Miss Marple frowned. A twist. If not Cross alone, then who? Her gaze fell on Graves, who shifted uncomfortably. You said the vial was missing when you found him, but you had access to the study all night. Graves paled. I poured the brandy after she left. Sir Reginald was distraught. Asked for a stronger drink. I added a drop of the digitalis thinking it was his medicine, but I misread the dose. It was an accident, Elsie gasped. Tom shook his head, but Miss Marple probed. An accident? Yet the clock stopped twice. Deliberate tampering to cover it up. Graves broke down. I panicked, wound the clock wrong to make it seem like foul play, distract from my mistake. Stopped it at midnight, then again at dawn when I checked. Arthur laughed bitterly. So no murder, just bungling, Slack grunted. Manslaughter, perhaps? We'll see. Miss Marple sighed, the pieces fitting at last. Cross's desperation led to the confrontation, but Graves's error caused the death, with his cover-up muddying the waters. The clock's secret compartment held the motive's root, but human frailty turned it deadly. As the fog cleared outside, the group dispersed, Slack leading Graves away. Miss Marple lingered, the clock's ticking on, a reminder that time reveals all. Chapter 10. The Final Chime. The mist had lifted from St. Mary Mead, replaced by a sharp autumn clarity that made the village seem both serene and starkly exposed. Miss Jane Marple sat in her cottage, the fire crackling softly as she arranged her notes. The lavender-scented glove, the attic letter, and the codicil from the ormolu clock's hidden compartment on her table. The confrontation in the Manor's drawing room had unravelled much. Evelyn Cross's blackmail, Graves's tragic mistake with the digitalis, and the clock's deliberate tampering to mask his error. Yet the second stop at dawn nagged at her, a loose thread in a tapestry she'd nearly woven complete. The truth, she sensed, was not just in the mechanics of the crime, but in the human hearts that wound it. Today she would return to Hawthorne Manor for one final reckoning, to lay bare every secret, and let the clock chime its last revelation. Miss Marple dressed carefully, choosing her warmest shawl against the morning chill, her mind replaying every clue like a melody she'd heard before but only now understood. The ormolu clock, with its scratched base and hidden drawer, had been the fulcrum of the mystery, its double pause a coded message from a killer or killers. Graves's confession of manslaughter explained the poisoning, but not the clock's dawn stop, nor the full extent of Evelyn Cross's role. Was she merely a catalyst, or had she orchestrated more than she admitted? And what of the others? Arthur's debts, Elsie's nerves, Tom's loyalty. Each held a piece of the puzzle, and Miss Marple was determined to fit them together. She arrived at the manor just as the village church bell tolled 10, its sound mingling with the manor's myriad clocks. Constable Slack had summoned the household again, at her request, to hear the case's resolution. The drawing room was sombre, its air heavy with anticipation. Arthur Hawthorne slouched in an armchair, his face a mix of relief and defiance, no longer the prime suspect but still wary. Elsie stood by the window, twisting her apron, her eyes red from crying. Tom leaned against the wall, his gardener's hands clasped, his expression one of quiet resignation. Mr. Graves sat rigidly, his butler's dignity frayed by his confession, knowing he faced consequences for his fatal error. Slack stood by the fireplace, clutching a notebook, eager to close the case, but reliant on Miss Marple's clarity. She began, her voice calm but commanding, like a schoolteacher addressing a rapt class. Thank you all for gathering. Sir Reginald's death has shaken us, but the truth is now within reach. The ormolu clock, stopping twice, once at 12:03 just after his death and again at dawn, was no mere malfunction. It was a signal, a distraction, and a keeper of secrets. She held up the codicil, its paper crisp despite its weighty contents. This document, hidden in the clock's base, reveals Sir Reginald's decision to cut off payments to Evelyn Cross, his illegitimate niece, daughter of Clara Beaumont. It also confesses his forgery years ago, hiding her claim to the Hawthorne estate. This was the truth the attic letter spoke of, the debt he refused to settle. She turned to Arthur, whose cigarette trembled slightly. You knew of this codicil, didn't you? Your argument with Sir Reginald was about your inheritance, threatened by Cross's potential claim. Arthur shifted, his jaw tight. I suspected he was hiding something, always muttering about family shame, but I didn't know her name or the details. I left him alive, I swear. Miss Marple nodded, believing him, but noting his desperation had fueled Cross's opportunity. Next, she addressed Elsie. You overheard Cross's argument with Sir Reginald days before, when she demanded her due. Your fear kept you silent, but you saw the letter with the red wax seal, didn't you? It was from Cross, threatening exposure unless he paid. Elsie nodded, tears spilling. Yes, ma'am. I saw it on his desk, but it was gone the next day. I thought maybe Mr. Graves took it. Her gaze flicked to the butler, who shook his head slowly. Miss Marple faced Graves, her tone gentle but piercing. You poured the fatal brandy, mistaking the digitalis vial for medicine, an overdose that killed Sir Reginald. You tampered with the clock at midnight to suggest foul play, hiding your mistake. But the second stop at dawn, who caused that? Graves' eyes widened, his voice hoarse. I only wound it once, ma'am, to stop at 12:03, I swear. I didn't touch it again. His confusion was genuine, and Miss Marple's suspicion shifted. She turned to Tom, the quiet gardener who'd seen too much. Tom, you unlocked the back gate for Cross at Sir Reginald's request, allowing her secret entry. You heard her voice in the study, arguing about the truth in the clock. But you also carried a heavy sack the morning after, seen by the vicar and the baker. What was in it? Tom's face crumpled, his voice barely audible. It was papers, ma'am. Sir Reginald's old letters from the attic. He asked me to burn them the day before he died. Said they'd cause trouble if found. I didn't know they were about Cross till you mentioned the codicil. Miss Marple's mind clicked. The burning papers explained the attic's disturbance, but not the dawn stop. She stepped to the ormolu clock, its golden face gleaming under the chandelier's light. This clock, she said, was tampered with twice. The midnight stop was Graves's doing, but the dawn stop required access after he left the study. The secret passage allowed someone to return undetected. She opened the clock's hidden drawer again, empty now save for dust, but noticed something new. A faint notch inside, as if a mechanism had been rigged. Evelyn Cross, she continued, addressing the room, came to blackmail Sir Reginald. She knew of the codicil and the forgery, learned through her mother's papers or her solicitor Blackwood. She stole digitalis from Dr. Haydock's surgery during her visit, leaving the vial in the study to pressure Sir Reginald, perhaps hoping he'd take it himself in despair. But she didn't count on Graves's mistake. Slack interjected, She's in custody, Miss Marple. Admits to the blackmail and the vial, but insists she left before midnight, thinking he'd live to pay. Miss Marple nodded, her eyes narrowing. But someone else was in the manor that night. Someone who used the passage, left the lavender scent, the silk scrap, and stopped the clock at dawn to confuse the timeline. She paused, her gaze settling on Elsie, who gasped, "Not me, ma'am. I was in my room." But Miss Marple shook her head. "Not you, Elsie, though your fear made you seem guilty. No, the true accomplice was someone with intimate knowledge of the manor, the clock, and Sir Reginald's habits." She turned to the group, her voice dropping. "Dr. Haydock." The room froze. Slack sputtered. "The doctor? He wasn't even here." But Miss Marple raised a hand. "He was, Constable. He lied about leaving after his afternoon visit. The lavender scent in the passage. His wife grows it in their garden, and he often carries her sachets. The silk scrap, a gift from his wife, a blue scarf he wore that night. He returned via the passage, using his old key from years serving the Hawthorns. He knew Cross's plan, having heard her threats at the surgery. When he found Sir Reginald dead, he saw a chance to protect the family's honour, and his own complicity in overprescribing digitalis years ago, which weakened Sir Reginald's heart. She explained. Haydock stopped the clock at dawn, rigging a delayed mechanism in the drawer, a trick he learned from Sir Reginald's clock obsession. He wanted to muddy the timeline, pointing suspicion at Cross or Arthur. But the scent, the scarf, and his own agitation betrayed him. Slack, stunned, radioed for Haydock's arrest. The room exhaled, the clocks ticking louder, as if relieved. Miss Marple concluded, Cross's blackmail set the stage, Graves' error killed, and Haydock's cover-up sealed the deception. The clock stopped twice because two hands tampered with it, each hiding their own truth. As Slack led the group away, she lingered, touching the ormolu clock. Its chime rang out, clear and final, the mystery solved. Back home, she sat by her fire, knitting resumed. The village would talk for weeks, but she'd done her part. If you've enjoyed this tale, she mused, imagining her audience, please like and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us. St. Mary Mead settled into its quiet rhythm, but Miss Marple knew another mystery was never far away.